Hi there, I'm Janet. Welcome to this lesson. You're going to tackle an excerpt from A Doll's House. Read the following excerpt and answer the questions that follow. We have Nora. What right have you to question me, Mr. Krogstad? You are one of my husband's subordinates, but since you ask, you shall know. Yes, Mrs. Linde is to have an appointment, and it was I who helped her, 'cause let me tell you that, Krogstad says, I was right in what I thought then. Nora walking up and down the stage. Sometimes one has a tiny little bit of influence, I should hope. Because one is a woman, it does not necessarily follow that when anyone is in a subordinate position, Mr. Krogstad, they should really be careful to avoid offending anyone who has influence. Exactly. Changing his tone, Krogstad. Mrs. Elmer, you will be so good as to use your influence on my behalf, Honora says. What do you mean? Krogstad says, you will be so kind as to see that I am allowed to keep my subordinate position in the bank. Nora sighed. What do you mean by that? Who proposes to take your post away from you? Oh, there is no necessity to keep up the pretense of ignorance. I can quite understand that. Your friend is not very anxious to expose herself to the chance of rubbing shoulders with me, and I quite understand too, whom I have to thank for being turned off. But I assure you, very likely, but to come to the point, the time has come when I should advise you to use your influence to prevent that. But Mr. Krogstad, I have no influence. Haven't? I thought you said yourself just now. Naturally, I did not mean you put that construction on it. What should make you think I have any influence of that kind with my husband? Oh, I have known your husband from our student days. I don't suppose he is any more unassailable than other husbands. If you speak slightingly of my husband, I shall turn you out of the house. You are bold, Mrs. Elmer. I am not afraid of you any longer. As soon as the new year comes, I shall in a very short time be free of the whole thing. Controlling himself, Krogstad says, listen to me, Mrs. Helmer. If necessary, I am prepared to fight for my small post in the bank as if I were fighting for my life. Enora says, so it seems. It is not only for the sake of the money, indeed, that weighs least with me in the matter. There is another reason. Well, I may as well tell you. My position is this. I dare say you know, like everybody else, that once many years ago I was guilty of indiscretion. Nora says, I think I've heard something of the kind. The matter never came into our court, but every way seemed to be closed to me after that, so I took to the business that you know of. I had to do something, and honestly, I don't think I have been one of the worst. But now I must cut myself free from all that. My sons are growing up. For their sake, I must try and win back as much respect as I can in town. This post in the bank was like the first step up for me, and now your husband is going to kick me downstairs again into the mud. But you must believe me, Mr. Krogstad, it is not in my power to help you all. Then it is because you haven't the will. but I have means to compel you. That is the excerpt. We go to the questions. Question 1. Krogstad asks 4 questions just before this excerpt. And which are the questions? He asks if it is Mrs. Linde he has seen with Helma. He also asks if Mrs. Linde had just arrived in town, and again that Mrs. Linde and Nora have been friends, and he also asks if Mrs. Linde is to have an appointment in the bank. The next question. For what reasons has Krogstad visited Nora? For what reasons has Krogstad visited Nora? We are told he visited Nora to plead with her, to influence her husband, to help him keep the job, and to remind Nora of their fraud, and also to blackmail Nora. And to our next question. I was right in what I thought then. What do you think Krogstad thought? He thought that Nora and her husband were both involved in the fraud and she was covering up for her husband. The next question. Describe the 2 character traits of Nora as brought out in this excerpt. And we are required to give traits that will give us 4 marks. She is protective. She can't afford to have Krogstad speak ill about her husband. Again, she comes out as bold. She tells Krogstad that she is no longer afraid of him, and she is optimistic. She hopes to be free from the whole thing, that is the thing about the debt. Identify and illustrate any 2 themes evident in this excerpt. In this excerpt, you can see the role of women as a theme. Krogstad believes Nora can influence her husband to help him keep the job, and boldness again. Nora is bold enough to caution Krogstad against speaking ill of her husband. We jump to the next question. Then it is because you haven't the will, but I have means to compel you. How does Krogstad plan to force Nora to talk to her husband? Telling her about the nature of the money she borrowed him, she reminds Nora of the details of their business. He tells Nora that when he goes down, Nora too will lose her position. And lastly, we have 3 words here. Write a word with the same meaning as each of the following. We have the word necessity, could also mean need. Pleaded could also mean begged. Influence could also mean power, according to the excerpt. Now that is it for this lesson on the excerpt from A Doll's House, and I hope it helps you improve on your English. Kindly subscribe and see you in the next lesson.